Apparently, there are towns in Alaska that have been abandoned due to Bigfoot activity. One of the towns, apparently, and I don't know anything about these stories at all, but apparently one of these towns is called Portlock, Portlock. There's another town, let me see where it is. I saw it just a minute ago. Oh, well, I can't find it. Portlock, there's another town. They're fishing villages, and all the people left because of a cryptid. And I did a little, the woman who's doing my editing now, her name is Carol Sutton. She is lovely, and she is a big help. She did a little search, and she found this quote: "The creature is believed to be a big factor in the abandonment of the fishing village of Portlock." Carol writes, "It's interesting and it's true, and all the people left the village because of this cryptid. It's a legend that began in the 1700s, and it goes way back beyond Bigfoot stories. It's said to have evil powers and huge claws, and the natives believe it killed a lot of people, so the village was abandoned. The last sighting was in 2021, which you may or may not be aware of. It was on a TV show," Carol writes. Carol, thanks for doing that research for me. And I'm going to read a story from a gentleman from a town called Nanwalik. It is in Alaska on the Kenai Peninsula. And here's what he writes, and it's a similar story. And this is an actual event that happened to him. Let me just read the story, and you'll be up to date. He writes, "I live in a small coastal village in Alaska on the Kenai Peninsula. The name of the village is Nanwalik. Most of the people from here originally came from infamous Port Chatham or Portlock. Sasquatch are known around here as the Nantina, Nantinaq. Carol says it's pronounced Nantina, but it could be Nantinaq, I guess. And they're part of their culture and their lives," he writes. "It's common for people to witness things, and ever since I was young, I've heard stories from elders and community members about these things. The creature is believed to be a big factor in the abandonment of the fishing village of Portlock. This event happened to me in early May when I was 17. The snow finally began melting, so black bears were out. Everyone's freezers were running low at the end of winter, and we needed meat. My cousin and I headed out on a four-wheeler toward a nearby bay 11 miles away, and we were hearing the black bears were in the area. Many had already been taken, and we searched the area and we came up with 0. We moved on to other areas looking for signs for bears, but again we found nothing. It had been a long day and we were tired, so we headed toward home, hoping the next day would be better. We were getting close to home. I wasn't paying attention much. It was a long ride. And I lifted my head and looked at a mountain that we were approaching, and I saw a black figure contrasted against the snow. "Is that bear in range?" I asked my cousin. "Well, it looks like it," he said. "That's the biggest black bear I've ever seen," I told him. "I'm going to take a shot." I found a good rest and got the bear in my scope, and then I decided the shot was too far. We didn't want a crippled bear in the area. "It's getting dark. Take the shot," my cousin said. "You've made shots like that before. Kill that bear so we can get home with some meat." I settled back in and I squeezed off around. The animal never flinched. I obviously had not hit my target. Now I was determined to take this bear, so I began to move closer. My path straight to the bear was blocked by a thick stand of alders, and there was no way I was going to get through all that tangle of vegetation. "I'll clear a path for you with the four-wheeler," my cousin said. "You can move behind me, and plus it'll make it easier getting the bear out." He headed straight into the brush, plowing down a path for me to come in behind him. After a hard 100 yards, the brush cleared and the area began to open, and I could still see the bear. It had not moved. I still didn't feel confident in my position. I needed to get a bit closer, and I kept moving, looking for the right angle to take the animal. With all the noise and commotion we were causing, I expected not to see the bear, but it remained. It was black as coal against the dirty spring snow. I kept moving forward, and soon I was in a thick stand of berries. and throughout the short walk, I had looked up several times to make sure the bear was still there. And again, he had never moved, even though it was difficult to see through the maze of branches that I was now trudging through. I would stop every few steps and listen. Up until this point, all had been quiet except for the noise my cousin was making further back. Once I stopped, I heard footsteps all around me. Leaves were crunching and branches were snapping. I called back to my cousin to see what he was doing, but he never answered. A step later, I heard him start the four-wheeler, and I knew the noise I was hearing wasn't him. Well, I wrote it off as local wildlife getting out of there while the human invaded their space, and I kept moving until the area cleared once again. In front of me stood the mountain. While taking a breather, I looked up to find the bear, and it was gone. Well, I started to climb. It couldn't have moved that far, and maybe I could move in on the animal. Within a short distance, I was back into a stand of berries again, and if the bear had been right in front of me, I wouldn't have seen it. Halfway up the slope, I heard the noises again, and animals moving around me. Leaves were crunching, and branches again were snapping. Something was moving in front of me, and it was coming my way. It was not getting out of the area of the human. In my mind, it had to be that bear, and it was about to walk right into me. But whatever it was big and it was moving fast. But behind me, I heard the same noises. Were there two bears, I thought. I chose an angle to move that avoided both, and I headed up the slope again, stopping to catch my breath every few yards. I saw another clearing ahead, and I picked up my pace, because if I could get there, I would have a good field of fire if something were tracking me. It would also get me out of these berry tangles and give me a chance to rest before the action started. So I waited, and nothing came into view. Soon I began to relax, thinking the crisis was over, so I found a rock and I sat down. The silence was almost as unnerving as the noises I heard. Now looking down the slope to the clearing at the base of the mountain, I saw my cousin burst into that clearing, waving his hands and screaming my name. Now, he's not a dramatic person and he's not much for talking, so this was unusual, seeing him behave in this way. It was obvious that he couldn't find me, so I removed my hoodie and I raised it with a stick and I started waving it in the air like a flag so he could see me. With me now located, he sprinted the distance. I had just walked up the slope in 5 minutes. It had taken me 20 minutes. Shaking and sweating, he said, "I couldn't stay in that brush. Something's in there and it's big. There were several of them. Have you ever felt like you were being stalked?" Well, that sent chills down my spine. And even though I was nervous, I tried to stay as calm as possible. "Okay," I said, "forget this bear. Let's get off this mountain and get home. I've been hearing the same noises." His eyes were wide open and he kept nodding as if to say, "Let's go." We were in the last 10 minutes of daylight and we needed to move fast. To get to the four-wheeler, we would have to walk the way that we had come. Through the area, we had both heard large animals that we felt like were stalking us. Together, we ran down the slope at a pace that wouldn't get us hurt, and at the bottom of the slope, where the ground somewhat leveled out, I pointed to the left and I said, "This way!" "No, it's to the right," my cousin yelled in a panic, and off he ran. I felt like either path would probably get us inside of the ATV, so I stayed to the left and I ran like hell. It was dark by now and the thicket was difficult to maneuver through, and I was tired and disoriented, but I kept running. At one point, I had to stop and catch my breath. And then, even over the heaving, I could hear those things around me, stomping around and moving. The sounds seemed more aggressive now, as if the predator was about to make its move. So I kept going. That's all I could do. I wasn't going to quit when I had energy left. The thicket went on, and I knew there was no way I was headed in the right direction. Earlier, I had moved through this area much faster at a walk. Now I was running, and I could not break out of it. so I had to stop and call for my cousin. Up to my right and on the road, I heard him yell back to me. It was 100 yards, I thought. I can make that. And I lowered my head and I bowled through the branches and brambles at full speed until I finally hit the open ground. Just up the bank was my cousin sitting on the ATV, waving his arm for me to hurry up. Within seconds, we were full throttle headed toward home. My parents had been worried about us, and we stood in the kitchen retelling the story. There was a long silence until my father told us both to sit at the table. They spent several minutes telling us the story of the Nantina and the little people who live on that mountain. Many people had heard and seen them. We believe we had been stalked or chased from the area by a Bigfoot now. Well, in bed that night, I heard something at my window, shuffling and scraping, and then a knock. There were no trees close to my bedroom window, so it wasn't that. And then there were more knocks, and then I heard the window being raised, as if something were trying to get in. I had left it cracked that night just to get some air. I jumped from my bed and ran to the window, and I slammed it shut and I locked it. I would endure this for several nights. I wasn't getting any sleep, and I was always tired. On the last night, the knocking started, and I could plainly hear something trying to open my window, and I had had enough. And once again, I jumped from the bed and I ran outside with a light to confront this creature, but nothing was there. The next day, I pulled a tape measure from the sill to the ground. The dimension was 13'6". What size of an animal would it take to reach from the ground up 13'6". Finally, I told my parents about the thing at the window, and they didn't believe me. I told a few friends, and they didn't believe me either. I was beginning to think I was nuts until I heard you telling stories from others with similar situations. Now, I don't know if sharing this story on your podcast will help me, but it feels good to share it with people who have an open mind. That's the end of the story. Man. Okay, first, I've heard of these stories. I think I've seen them on YouTube. I've never clicked on the videos, but I've seen... It seems like I know something about some of these Alaskan villages that are just abandoned. Some of them are villages that were set up by whites. Like maybe whaling stations, it seems like. I don't know. They look like big industrial areas, and they're totally abandoned. It's like modern buildings. They're not primitive buildings like the native people might live in. I've seen pictures of conventional modern structures, probably built in the late 1800s or 1900s, for whaling stations, totally abandoned because people say that they were plagued by Sasquatch. Now, this may not be that place, but again, I have not read up on any of this, but it does strike a chord with me that I've seen something about this. And Carol Sutton, the woman who's doing some editing for me now with these stories, she read up on it, and she says it seems to be true, and there was a show made on it. So maybe a lot of you real knowledgeable Bigfoot people probably know about these stories, but I don't know. It sounds interesting. It might be worth looking up and seeing what you can find on it. But I thought that was an interesting story. Now, let me end with this. This is, I'm going to end this video here in a minute. And I need to explain because, first, I'm in a hurry. I'm working on Steve Lilly. I'm trying to get Curse of the Wendigo ready to upload and launch this. I think it's Thursday, October the 20th. But I wanted to get this good story out on a Sunday afternoon because it's really good. But I put out a poll on my community tab. And the question was, what type of videos like I do, the narration audiobook style videos, what is your favorite length, or what length do you enjoy the most? And there was a poll there, and you could tap 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, or an hour or longer. 5,000 people took the poll, which was remarkable to me. I got hundreds of comments on it, really nice comments from people saying that they like the longer videos. And so 65% in the poll picked an hour or longer. Well, traditionally, I usually do videos between 40 minutes and an hour and 10 minutes. That's that's kind of how they. So I'm putting out the length of videos that people seem to enjoy, or the majority of people seem to enjoy. And if you don't like longer videos, you can push a little, you can hit the save for later button on a YouTube video and come back to it later if you've only got 15 minutes or whatever. But I'd like to thank everyone who responded to that, because it really gave me a good insight into, I'm out here doing this stuff and I have no idea what people like. I don't know. This month marks 4 years that I've been doing this podcast, and I don't know why anybody listens to this, and you may think that's false modesty or false humility, but it's not. I really don't get it. But I'm glad you do, and I love doing different things. I love doing these audiobooks. Like yesterday, I uploaded the conclusion to Barely Dead. If you listen to that, you need to listen to the first one first, and then listen to the conclusion. But Jeff Crawford's a great writer. I love doing those really those short stories like that. I like doing the longer stuff. And my first love are these emails, and but I'm kind of switching back and forth and doing some different things, hoping that you guys like the variety and the content. But I think I've got the length of the videos nailed down. So there's that. Last thing I'll tell you is I put up a video maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago about getting rid of some of my roosters. It was 2 days later I had placed those roosters. They live with Chase and Jade right now. Chase and Jade have a small working little farm. They have over 100 hens, and they took, we kept 2 and we gave them 4, and those roosters are there, and I'm sure they are in rooster heaven. 100 hens, and I think they only had 1 rooster, so now there's several roosters to kind of take care of all those hens. And I'm thinking they're probably happy where they are, but I appreciate Chase and Jade for taking those roosters and giving them a good home. Okay, I just wanted to get out a little video today, tell a story and kind of tell you what's going on. One more time, on the 20th, we're going to launch, I think it's going to be an 8-day series of Curse of the Wendigo by D.A. Roberts. It's a book just like the Wild Hunt Odin's Call that we released about a month ago. It's going to be the same kind of thing, but this is a great story. It's really, really good. It's fast-paced. It'll just enthrall you. And after that, we'll get back to these emails, and we'll start telling everybody's real, true stories that they send me. I like doing different things and having a good time doing it. So thank you for 4 years of a wonderful time that I've had. You all are the nicest, absolute nicest people on the whole internet. And there's no way to tell you how much I appreciate you for showing me that I found something that I never thought I would do. And it's narrate stories and books and things like that. It's just nuts. It's totally crazy that I'm doing this. If you knew me, you would say, oh man, that's so weird that you're doing that. But I love doing it. I swear, I love it now more than I did when I started. I love interacting with all of you, and I don't know, I just appreciate every one of you. All the people who comment, and I appreciate all the people who don't comment. Everybody who listens, I appreciate you so much. I know I'm being redundant, but how do you say thank you for giving a guy, for giving me something to do that I enjoy so much? You just can't imagine how much I love doing this. So I'll end with that. Thank you for your support. Thank you for watching the channel. Thank you for watching the podcast, the What If It's True podcast, which now Dixie and the What If It's True podcast are pretty much merged. All right, I'm out of breath. I'm tired of talking. I'm going to get back to editing Curse of the Wendigo. You guys have a great rest of your weekend. We'll see you guys on the next one. Thanks.